Hi, this is Aisling. This time on Mutant Memories, we will be talking about the New Mutants number 12. Sorry there was a short break in these videos. I took a little time off of making videos because I was ill for a few days and I just needed a small rest. This issue of the New Mutants was released on October 25th, 1983. All the same people from issue number 11 also worked on this issue, Buscema doing the pencils, Mandrake finishing again, and Louise Simonson editing. As a reminder, you can read along on Marvel Online, or you can pick up physical back issues pretty cheaply, but enough talk, let's get into it. Today's issue is called Sunstroke. The issue begins with an image of DaCosta International S.A.'s shiny and modern skyscraper in downtown Rio de Janeiro. The international and successful company was founded by Emmanuel DaCosta. We see Emmanuel entering the office and he greets his doorman and asks how the doorman's son is doing. The man tells him that his son is studying hard. We are told that Emmanuel is very wealthy and worked his way up from his humble beginnings in a family so poor they were almost like slaves. He still has the scars from his quote-unquote master's whip. Emmanuel's happiest day, other than when his son was born, was when he brought the man who had enslaved his family to ruins. We are told that Emmanuel goes out and gets what he wants, and heaven help the fool who would stand in between him and what he wants. At that moment, a voice off camera says, "Hello, Father," in Portuguese. The splash page is an image of a startled Emmanuel seeing that his son Roberto, Bobby, is sitting at his desk with his feet kicked up on said desk. Emmanuel says, "Roberto," in shock. The exposition tells us that Emmanuel never thought his own son would be one of the people to defy him. Bobby explains that maybe he should have telephoned to tell his father he was coming to see him, but Bobby says he wanted the visit to be a surprise, much like he and his mother's survival after Emmanuel sent an assassin after them. Emmanuel tells Bobby, "You're in my chair." Bobby says he remembers sitting on his father's knee, looking out at the city, and how his father promised him the whole city could be his one day. He says his father laughed like it was a joke, but Bobby thought it was so wonderful his father had worked his way up from nothing. Bobby says everything his father used to do made him proud, and he wanted to live up to his father's legacy and expectations. But Bobby says he no longer cares about this, and he no longer wants whatever his father has to offer. Emmanuel tells Bobby that basically he has never really suffered and he doesn't know what the world is like without money. He says Bobby has much to lose and he is casting himself into an abyss. Bobby says he has lost so much already and he doesn't feel like he is jumping off a cliff, but more like he is being pushed by his own father. Bobby yells to his father that he knows he tried to have himself and his mother killed for the riches of the Lost Madeira. Emmanuel says he didn't want them killed. Bobby asks him in a sarcastic way if maybe things just got out of hand and Castro just exceeded his authority. He asks why his father needs more wealth and power than he already has. Emmanuel says bluntly his reasons for needing more are his own. Bobby says he wants to know these reasons and asks if Castro had killed him and Nina, would Emmanuel even be sorry that he had? Emmanuel tells him not to take that tone with him and that he is his father. Bobby says that the man he was looking for, the father he had known, was gone and only a stranger stands in his place. Emmanuel raises a hand to strike Bobby and asks him who he thinks he is. Bobby transforms into his Sunspot form and tells his father that he is Sunspot in this form, a mutant with the power to level the very building they stand in. He tells his father that he is considered a monster because he is a mutant, but says when he's looking at his father, he wonders who is more the monster. Bobby tells Emmanuel to leave Nova Roma alone. He says if his father makes a move into that country, he and the New Mutants will know, and they will do everything they can to stop him. Then Bobby says farewell to his father. His father tells him that if he leaves him, he will disown him, and it will be as if he had no son at all. And Bobby replies that he is half an orphan now and leaves, slamming the door behind him. Emmanuel says, "Berto," and then for some reason smashes the teacup he is holding in his hands. Ouch, that had to hurt, and wow, I guess he's strong. Emmanuel places a call to his assistant to come in and clean up the tea and asks him to place a call to a special number in New York. The person who picks up the phone on the other end of the line is Sebastian Shaw, and Emmanuel informs Shaw that he has decided to join the Hellfire Club, so that's that. Outside, Bobby tears at his tie and thinks himself a fool for how he handled this situation with his father. He says he came to make things better and not worse. He thinks that he should have listened to his mother. His mother decided to stay behind in Nova Roma, and she tells Birdo that his father has just lost his way. And if those who love him abandon him, then how will he find his way back to the person he once was? Bobby is crying and wonders if this is perhaps his father's true self. We then switch scenes to see Amara and Danny on the beach of Ipanema. Amara marvels over the swimsuit she is wearing, and she is surprised because Ipanema, native Nova Roma, looked like nothing more than a small village. She loves the ocean too. She says she never imagined so much water could exist. But she thinks the sun is awful, and even with sunglasses, the sun hurts her eyes. Same, Amara, I feel you here. I have vampire eyes, so I get it. She thinks to herself she doesn't belong in this modern world and that she wishes she was home. We then flash back to Amara and her father talking back in Nova Roma in her room. She asks her father why she has to leave, and he tells her it's for her own good. She says it's easy for him to say. He explains that it isn't easy for him, and when she asks why she must go away then, he tells her it's what's best for her and that he will miss her so terribly. She again asks if he feels this way, why must he send her away? Her father explains that the time of isolation from the modern world is coming to an end, and she will learn the ways of the outside world from the New Mutants, and he will learn from Nina DaCosta, and they will teach everyone else in Nova Roma. Then he says she also has godlike powers. Amara assumes this is the true reason he wants her to go away. She says that she has heard talk in the market that she is a demon or a monster or a freak, some sort of changeling left in the place of his real daughter by the Black Priestess. But at that moment, in her anger, her powers fly up and lava spurts up from the floor. She runs to the comfort of her father's embrace, apologizing and saying she is scared. He tells her he is also scared and calls her a sunflower. He says that she must learn to control her powers. He tells her that if she doesn't master her powers, she may come to be the monster she fears, and that Charles Xavier can help her. He tells her that she knows he is right in this. She says it doesn't make the situation any easier, and she is afraid she will never see her father again. He tells her it is in the hands of fate, and if they never see each other again in this life, he knows they will meet up with her mother and each other in the life beyond. Cut back to the beach. A couple of muscle men come up to Danny and Amara. One of them says, "Lovely lady, you look so sad on a day like today." That's not allowed, to Amara. Danny tells him to go away and not to bother them, but the main guy grabs Amara and forces her to kiss him. This scares and enrages Amara. She tells him, "I am no strumpet dog, unhand me or I'll..." And in the moment of anger, her powers flare up once again, and magma floods up in a mini eruption. Danny tells her too late to watch her powers, then a large volcano springs up on the beach because Amara is so scared and angry, and it scares most of the people on the beach as well. Not too far away, Rain is nervously stepping into a church. She thinks Reverend Craig would be very angry if he saw her in a Catholic church. Rain thinks that it's probably okay though because Catholics and Scots Presbyterians all talk to the same God. She kneels and begins to pray. She wonders if God will even listen to her because she's a wee slip of a girl. She thinks it's probably hopeless because of who she is and the things she has done. She thinks she must be already condemned to hell. She wonders if she is truly damned, and she thinks about how guilty she feels for being so wicked and spiteful and almost condemning Amara and her father to death, and almost getting all of Nova Roma enslaved. She thinks about how she loves Sam Guthrie, but he likes Amara and not her, and how this makes her jealous and made her hate Amara. She also thinks that her best friend Danny has begun to spend more time with Amara as well. She wonders if they all truly consider her a friend at all. She wonders if they don't really like her, but only like her because she is a mutant shapeshifter who can turn into a wolf. At that moment, Sam runs in, and he tells her he's been looking everywhere for her. He says Amara has disappeared, and Danny thinks Rain could track her with her wolf senses. Elsewhere in the city, we see a scared and confused Amara wandering around the city. She got caught in the panicking crowd on the beach and got separated from Danny and is no longer in a part of the city she finds familiar. Because she is not used to traffic, she is standing in the middle of the road, and tons of cars are using their horns at her. The whole thing is disorienting for Amara. She thinks the chariots move so fast, and the car exhaust chokes her. A man yells at her to get out of the road, but she cannot understand what he is saying. Things get more intense. The sun beats down on her relentlessly, and she thinks she needs to find shelter from the sun. She breaks down completely at this point and thinks it would have been better if Celine had killed her. She yells out to her father and her mother in heaven, and she covers her eyes while cars surround her. A police officer runs into the road and yells for everyone to quit hitting their horns because they are scaring her. It seems like he wants to help her, but once he asks her name and where she lives and she responds in English that she cannot understand him, he flips completely and says that since she is a foreigner, she might be on drugs. And he tells her he will take her to the police station. She tells him to stop grabbing her because he is hurting her arm, and he threatens to hit her. Just like on the beach, her fear causes her powers to explode, and she hopes no one will die because of her using her power. Another small volcano erupts from the street, throwing a vehicle high into the air. In another part of town, the New Mutants hear the sound of Amara's powers going off. They say the blast was pretty bad and rush towards the sounds. Bobby says that the buildings are shaking, and Sam says to be careful of falling glass because a lot of windows probably just broke. Sam says he hopes Amara hasn't caused too much. He pauses and then says, damaged, and we're shown the complete chaos that Amara has caused with her powers. Sam says Amara is their responsibility and they should help the authorities. Danny tells him the police are doing fine without them, and the best thing they can do is find Amara and help her before she causes a really big disaster. Danny asks if Rain can track her in her wolf form. Rain says sure and changes into her wolf form. We are told that Rain feels the connection to her soulmate Danny and gets comfort and strength from it, but unfortunately Rain begins to sneeze. It turns out that the sulfur in the air from all the volcanic activity is making Rain as a wolf sneeze, and she cannot track Amara because of this. Bobby tells Danny it's not as if they don't know where she's been, so then he cracks a joke to follow that volcano. Danny is pleased he is joking around and assumes that whatever happened with Bobby and his father must not have been too bad if he's joking like this. We are then back with Amara, and she is in the burning hot sun in a derelict lot. We are then told that she thankfully loses her mind at that point. She begins to pray to the hot sun overhead and says, "O Helios, Lord of the sun, torment me no longer. Let my inner fire be joined with thy celestial glory. Let us be one forever." And then her wish is seemingly granted. She turns into her magma form, a being of hot fire and lava, and we are told there is pain, but that's to be expected when you become a god. She begins to feel one with the earth, the fire below the surface burning in her veins. She basically goes crazy and begins to destroy everything around her, pulling fire from the earth's core. She sees nothing wrong with what she is doing and thinks a goddess should have her sacrifices, and besides, she thinks it's fun. She thinks she will reshape the world as she feels fit, and those who challenge her will face her wrath, and maybe she will murder them all. But a bad feeling strikes her, and then she realizes by being this way she is no better than the monster who killed her mother, who tried to kill her. In being this way, she is no better than Celine. She screams no, and we are shown that Amara is human again. It is probable that she was just hallucinating and imagining the things that we just saw because the sun made her sick. But Amara is so delirious she doesn't know if the destruction already happened or not. She thinks how easy it is to go out of control and destroy everything. Then she passes out. A few voices are talking around her. One points out that she is a girl, another says that they will take her. A while later, the New Mutants are at the spot we last saw Amara in. Danny says they must have just missed Amara. Rain says it's okay because she can smell the people who took Amara now, and that most likely they picked her up and put her in a car or truck, but she can still track her. Sam playfully says that it will be no problem because Rain can track her, and he nuzzles her on the head. Rain turns around and tells him to stop touching her and that she is not his pet. Sam says he is sorry. Rain tells him it's fine and tells him to keep his hands to himself from now on. Rain tells Danny and the others that there is a strange taste in the air and that it makes her nervous and like she would like to run into the open country. Bobby says he and his parents were in an earthquake a few years back and the sky was the same way before the quake as it is now. Danny says that she is worried that after all the mini volcanoes that Amara has been triggering, she's scared she will make a very big one. The team then rushes off to find Amara before that can happen. Danny says they have to find Amara fast. Up on the hill, there is a less fortunate part of town, a shantyville favela, and its stark contrast from the sleek skyscrapers of the downtown area. Amara is in one of the dwellings there, passed out on a bed. A voice says, "Why did you bring her here, Vendinio, and not the hospital?" And we see that it's actually a family taking care of Amara, dabbing her head with a wet cloth. The older sister, I think it's the older sister and not the mom, tells them that she is obviously not one of them and has probably never had to work or struggle. And she tells them that if Amara dies in their home, they will be blamed for it. The older sister says to the younger boy to take some money and call the ambulance. But at that moment, Sunspot bursts into the home. "I've come for my friend," he yells, terrifying all the kids in the home. Someone shouts, "A demon!" Bobby feels terrible when he sees that they are only kids. He had been expecting street thugs or weird older adults. Bobby, now human again, tries to calm the kids down, explaining that he is a human and doesn't want to harm them. He only wants his friend back. The older sister cries for one of the younger boys to put down the chair that he's wielding towards Bobby. The New Mutants run into the home and Sam asks if there's been any trouble. Bobby explains that he can handle the situation with the residents of the house. And Danny runs towards Amara, who is passed out on the bed still. Rain asks how Amara is doing. Bobby explains to the family that these are all his friends as well. Danny tends to Amara and says she is feverish and delirious and must have sunstroke. She asks if there's anywhere to get ice to lower her body temperature. The family says not in this neighborhood. Danny thinks back to when Rain was having heat stroke in the Amazon a few issues back, and how her illusions were able to help Rain think she was colder. So Danny tries to do the same thing with Amara, but her vision shows death heading towards innocent people who are running and fleeing from it. Danny screams, "No!" Then I think this is an error, but it looks like Danny is supposed to be saying this, but it's coming from seemingly the older sister who owns the hovel's mouth. She says Amara's heart desire is death, not just for herself, but all the New Mutants. Bobby yells to the others as the earth trembles that this is a pre-shock and that a much larger quake is probably on the way. Danny yells that Amara is too weak to be moved and Bobby will have to go get some ice and she hopes he can work fast. A moment later, Sam and Bobby are blasting off. Sam is carrying Bobby as they fly. Bobby tells Sam there is a warehouse district nearby and that they should check there first. Sam is skeptical and says it might take too long to get the ice back. Luckily at that moment, Bobby happens to spot a ice truck on the road below them. So because Sam and Bobby are blasting, and Bobby is in his sunspot form, they are able to pick up the truck without their bodies tearing apart. Sam points out landing is not going to be fun, and in that moment they realize they have bigger problems. The water in Rio's Bay is boiling, probably because Amara opened a fissure in the earth, and the magma is pouring into the bay. Bobby screams that Amara is making a huge volcano. We see only blackness after that, and we are told that her initial awareness is a longing for blessed oblivion. Then flames consume the body and the soul, quickly turned into glittering crystalline ice sculptures of unearthly beauty, before they too shatter. We see that Amara is finally opening her eyes. She asks, "Danny, my friends?" We see that she is laid out on a big block of ice. Amara asks, "Is it really you?" And Danny says, "'Fraid so," while reaching out and helping Amara. She tells her to take it easy because she has had a rough day. Danny tells the others that Amara's fever has broken and that she seems okay, but she will probably still need to be seen by a doctor. Danny tells Berto they have to do something for the family whose house they're in to take care of the mess they have made in their house. Bobby says he will take care of it. Amara wearily asks if the city is destroyed. Bobby tells her, barely even scratched, aside from some messed up streets and a brand new island in the bay. Amara looks overwhelmed and says, "Father was right. I have much to learn about myself as a girl and a mutant." And she reaches out and Rain takes her hand, and Amara continues to speak. "I see now that I cannot do that by myself. I will need your Professor Xavier. I'm afraid, my friends, for better or for worse, you are stuck with me." And then Rain smiles and said, "That suits us just fine," and that's the end of the issue. The next issue is called School Days. Thoughts upon originally reading. So remember that I did admit that I didn't really like Amara when I was younger, so this issue for me when I originally read it was not one of my favorites. I thought Amara getting sick was so irritating, and I was really pretty mean about what she went through. I kind of just felt like this one was meh. I didn't really care for the setting or the story back then. I since, though, have wised up, and I know that Brazil is a super beautiful and interesting place. And just because I hate the sun and beaches doesn't mean that I should dislike those things in fiction. It's pretty silly that I felt this way and that I hated, even fictional hot climates. I was kind of a jerk when I was a kid. I also remember feeling kind of angry at how Sam tried to pet Rain. I wondered how he could be so oblivious to her feelings, and they never really made up after they had those fights back in Nova Roma, so him reaching out to touch her was super weird. I read this one pretty early on in my journey of reading the New Mutants, and what I mostly remember is thinking Amara should stop whining. I know, I was really mean. It's a little embarrassing now to admit that I hated a fictional character so much for some sort of stupid, kind of sexist reason. I remember I also had no idea what Portuguese sounded like, so I went on the computer to my parents' Ancient Encarta program to see if they had examples of the language. They did, and I remember thinking that Portuguese sounded really nice. I also looked online and found this song that was actually really pretty. I wish I knew what it was and I could hear it again, but I don't speak Portuguese, so it's kind of hard to search for something in a language that you don't understand. So I guess at least I learned something new when I read this issue. Yeah, not much else to say about my memories on this one, because this is another that isn't really one of my favorites. But starting the next issue, I have many more positive and deep memories of this series. So there will be much more to say in the next video. I'm actually pretty excited. Issue 13 is when I think the series starts to get great, and maybe it has to do with the fact that Kitty and Doug are in the next issue, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We will get there. Thoughts upon rereading. So I'll try and go through my thoughts of this in the order that they appear in the comics, so I'm not just bouncing around back and forth throughout the plot. I'll say overall, I wasn't crazy about this issue even this time around. It felt like a little bit like filler, but I guess they needed to have some plot that happens so Amara is willingly going with the New Mutants. So don't worry, I can tell you now, I will not be as mean to Amara this time around as I was when I originally read this, but I do have some questions and thoughts. First of all, I kind of want to know more about Emmanuel. I feel like I want to know, was he always evil and Bobby and Nina didn't see it? Or did this just kind of happen slowly? Or did some major thing happen to make him so greedy and jaded? I also don't really remember if it is ever revealed why he is so intent on taking that land in the Amazon in the first place. If it's just because he's greedy, I guess that's kind of lame, but also realistic. I want more characterization from him. I want a reason for how he could put his son and wife in mortal danger. What would cause a person to hurt loved ones for money, especially because he already has enough money in the first place? I think it's probably just like real life where the rich must always be richer and often hoard what they have. Don't get me started on that though. Yeah, I want an Emmanuel story though. I want like a mini series. Maybe nobody else in the world wants this, I don't know. Probably nobody else wants this. I don't remember Bobby ever suffering financially after cutting ties with his father, but I guess also Xavier is very rich, so Bobby would have been taken care of by him. I am really happy that Bobby didn't take any of his father's shit. I kind of remember a little about the future of Bobby and his father, and that made this exchange a lot more interesting. I won't spoil it, but it gets intense. And speaking of Emmanuel, how strong is he supposed to be? He just flat out crushes a glass teacup in his hands. First of all, did he get cut? I feel like he would. Secondly, I'm sure it's possible to do this, but it seems very unlikely. I guess he was really angry. Yeah, it's kind of silly though. So about Amara. First of all, I am on the same page with her about the sun. I melt at any temperature above 65, especially bright direct sunlight. Also, as I mentioned before, I have vampire eyes that do not do well in the sun, and I'm sure writing at a screen all the time doesn't help this, but I felt bad for her because she was obviously very uncomfortable. The whole bathing suit thing was like, okay, and once again, because we cannot go an issue without this, Danny is in a bathing suit, but surprise, surprise, she is actually appropriately dressed for the situation this time. I was like, finally, Danny is shown in an appropriate outfit. But back to Amara. I do have a lot more sympathy for her this time around. She is really a stranger to the modern world, and her father having to send her away was very sad. But also he has sent her away before, and I kind of thought she would trust him a little more to have her best interests in mind. But also, she is a teenager, and they were just reunited. I'm going to discuss assault here, and if that is not a topic you wish to engage in, I will put a timestamp to skip this conversation on the screen. Okay, here's the timestamp. Alright, then that scene with those gross dudes who assault Amara, I hated it so much, but sadly, this is something that happens. I've had this happen to me multiple times where a creepy dude, or sometimes a lady, just randomly grabs you or kisses you. I think a lot of people have unfortunately had this happen to them too, and poor Amara probably never had something like this happen to her before, or even considered this happening to her. because she's kind of sheltered in some ways, and this world is not hers at all. Although, I don't know, Romans could get weird, so who really knows? But also, I think Amara is like 15 or 16 years old, still really young, and I'm guessing very inexperienced. And to have one of your first experience like this being assault is pretty terrible. I don't blame her for losing control of her powers at the time. I mean, Danny just has to breathe the wrong way and her powers go off. So yeah, Amara losing control in this situation is so understandable. I really think when I was a kid, I wasn't very kind to her in this moment, and I didn't really realize how messed up it was, but now that I have more experience in life, I can see that this is a really bad thing. Okay, now we're done talking about assault. So, with all these volcanoes popping up and Amara presumably changing the geography of the bay forever, did all this make international news? Did Professor Xavier see this? Was he aware of what happened? I'm just curious. And you would think there would be a lot more police if this sort of thing was happening. I just feel like in this issue, kind of serious stuff happens, but the issue is just treated like a fun little one-off, a side quest, if you will. I will say I also liked the character development of Rain in this issue. I guess I have my answer as to what her religion is. She is not Catholic, but she is definitely Scots Presbyterian. I feel so bad for her. She's only a teenager and she has, I think, her first crush on Sam, and he likes Amara, and she let the jealousy from that situation color her decisions. Also, Sam literally tries to pet her, and I agree with Rain. In that moment, Sam was kind of treating her literally like a dog. I don't think he meant it this way, but it definitely came off that way, and it bothered me too, and I'm glad that Rain stood up for herself. I feel like Rain is constantly being treated poorly or being bopped on the head, but Rain's treatment even continues in the comics of today, I think. I won't get into the subject of how they treated a certain event in the past few years that involved her, but it upset a lot of people. I also feel so bad for Amara getting lost in the city and having sunstroke. As I said before, I'm a person who's very sensitive to heat in the sun, probably because of my Irish genes, which made me just not built for bright light. I have actually had sunstroke and heat stroke a bunch of times in my life. I have literally passed out from them as well. I can't imagine how scary and disorienting it would be to be lost in a city that is basically the equivalent of going into the future 1,000 years and also not speaking the language there. That would be truly awful. Poor Amara. I would probably just give up and cry as well. Also, what the hell was that policeman's problem? Why did he assume she was on drugs? Is this common in South America to assume that foreigners are trouble or drug addicts? If you know of something like this, or you can comment on this, please tell me in the comments. Maybe this would happen in the United States too, though, if I'm being honest. Cops tend to not trust people who don't speak English. At least this is true where I'm living. Also, like I said, I have had heat stroke before, and I do remember it making me delirious, but I don't remember going insane because of it. I just passed out after having some abstract hallucinations. But I did some research on sunstroke, and it could have caused feelings and hallucinations like what Amara went through, though. It can cause not only the hallucinations, but apparently sunstroke can cause violent outbursts as well. I don't know more about it or why this happens. This was just from a quick Google search. At first I thought this was a little dramatic of Amara, but now I do think Amara in that state was very dangerous, and that the New Mutants were right to be a little scared. So I don't have much more to say, but I thought it might be fun for me to read a little bit of the letters in this issue. Okay, I'm not going to read every letter, but I'll read a couple of them. The first one is from Robert J. Sidaro. He says, "Gents, in response to Dustin Leary's letter, New Mutants number 5, about keeping the book simple by having these children fight easy foes like Magneto, the Hellfire Club, Black Tom Cassidy, and the Juggernaut, I would like to know who he thinks is a hard battle. Galactus, along with the entire Kree and Skrull races? Go easy on these heroes, fellows, and perhaps they'll live long enough to make it to their first anniversary. Easy. Sheesh." And they said, "You'll see how the kids stack up against some of the X-Men's big-time foes in about 6 months, Robert, when they take on not only the Hellfire Club, but meet a whole new batch of mutants their own age, students of the evil White Queen's Massachusetts Academy. There, assuming they survive, the sky's the limit. Galactus better watch out." Okay, and then the next one is from Scott Duff, and it says, "Dear Louise and Chris, I like the New Mutants comic. I like the characters, I like the art, for the most part. And the situations. I loved Who's Scaring Stevie, New Mutants number 4. Fantastic. Recently, a friend and I discussed the possibility of adding New Mutants to the team. The major characters we thought of were Illyana Rasputin, Franklin Richards, and Teresa Cassidy. Please don't add anyone, especially these 3. Leave Illyana to the X-Men, Franklin to the Fantastic Four, and Teresa to her father, Sean Cassidy. I agree with the possibility of additions to the team, but not now, later. Let the team grow. And they said, there's little chance, Scott, of Franklin or Teresa joining the New Mutants. Illyana is a different matter. She is a mutant and does have powers, though she is still terrified to use them, for reasons that will be explained in the Magic Limited series. What will become of her and her special powers remains to be seen. Okay, the next one is from Danny M. Davids, Colorado Springs. Dear Chris, what do you think you're doing with Rain? Are you trying to make her a candidate for the insane asylum or what? I can empathize with her. I was brought up with fundamentalist beliefs. As a result, anything that is outside the scope of that teaching is dismissed as evil, whether it really is or not. I'm sure the attitudes and actions of those people Rain has met so far in the United States has been a little unsettling. You yourself have previously stated that, as Wolfsbane, she has difficulty doing things that a normal wolf would do. However, if you keep up the treatment she's been receiving of late, she's going to lose her marbles. The other members of the teams have all had their share of lumps, but geez, every time I turn the page, I find Rain badly injured, lying unconscious on the ground, or about to be killed. You're giving the liberated woman a bad hassle, Chris, and I don't really like it much. This girl has spirit, courage, and a love of her powers. If you don't change things real soon, I'm afraid we're going to have another Susan Storm Richards on our hands. Personally, I think this group of kids is too good for that. Rain deserves better treatment. One other thing, when are you going to get her some clothes made out of unstable molecules so that she doesn't have to wear that costume all the time? Streaking went out years ago. And they said, Professor Xavier's working on that, Danny. The problem is, and I can't read that, his concept of style and good taste with Rain's. Also, cloth of unstable molecules takes time to construct, and it can't be bought at your local fabric store. Rain has difficulty behaving as a true wolf would because she isn't one. She's a human being who can shift her shape into that of a wolf. Her natural instincts when in wolf form are still those of a girl, thus she has some problems coping with the shapeshift. As far as her tendency to get bopped on the head a lot, she too has noted the unfairness of it, and has decided that henceforth all the kids will get bopped with equal enthusiasm. Rain will just heal a lot faster. And the last one is from Bob Pinaha of Highland Park, New Jersey. And he says, Dear Chris, Sal, Bob, and Louise, I question the appearance of Team America so early on in the history of New Mutants. Such an appearance seems to suggest that the New Mutants aren't strong enough to sustain interest in their own series. Wouldn't it be wiser to keep all the New Mutant stories, at least in the beginning, in the family? I'd like to see more focus on the group's adjustment to their powers and their environment, as well as more influence from the X-Men. Perhaps Storm could take an interest in them, as she did with Kitty Pryde. Think of it, an opportunity to actually train and discipline a new horde of heroes, rather than see them recklessly learn in battle. Surely that would be a Marvel first. And they said, a Marvel first? What about Professor Xavier's earlier efforts to train and discipline the young X-Men? And a good job he did too. But yeah, I agree with Bob that you know how I feel. If you watched my videos, you know how I feel about them putting Team America in issue number 5. And that's a few of the letters, and I'm glad that they mentioned the Magic Limited series because after issue 14 of New Mutants, I'm going to talk about the Magic Limited series and Illyana in general, probably in a bigger, longer video because she is my favorite character. That's all the letters that we have for this issue. So also, just like the last issues, this one has some neat ads in it, which I will show you now just like I did in the last video. So here's some vintage ads. final rating. So I got all the way through editing the audio for this video, and I realized I never did a final rating on this one, so this is editing Aisling adding that in. For this issue, I rated it a 5 out of 10, and the breakdown was I gave it 2 out of 3 points for art, 1 point out of 3 for this story, 1 point for character development because we do learn about Rain and a lot about Amara and what she's thinking about in her background, and 1 point for how it holds up, because it did hold up. There wasn't anything like terrible about this story. I just didn't think it was like that good, so I gave it a 5 out of 10, kind of ho-hum average. Alright, well, I think we have reached the end. I'm sorry my videos have been a little slow coming out recently. Like I said, I've been sick and taking care of other things. I am really excited for the next issue, though, because it starts, I think, the best part of the New Mutants. And that good streak is pretty consistent until about issue 87, well, where things get horrible, in my opinion. Yeah, I won't go into it now, but I don't like the way the New Mutants ended at all. I will try and get the next issues to video up quickly, and then I'm probably going to do a little sidetrack in the video after that, but I think it will be New Mutants related. I'm currently working on a video that I've been working on for over a month, not because it's very long, I just have to keep starting over. I don't even know at this point if it will see the light of day, but we will see. I finished it at this point, but it's just things keep popping up that make me want to change the video. Okay, enough rambling. Please hit the like button if you liked the video, and maybe even subscribe if you want more content like this. It really means so much to me, all of you who comment or like or subscribe. I'm really happy that you're all here with me. So have a great day or night. Be well. Aisling out.